So I'll need a roll call. Roll call presence to prove quorum, I guess. Signs,
Here.
Watson,
Yes.
Markelier,
Yes.
Stivers,
Here.
Braccio,
Here.
McKee.
Here.
And we have Debbie DeMaria and Kristen Lavault, who are ex officios. So thank you all for being here. So we're moving right along. We had 3 chapters to review for this meeting. And I will say I'm very encouraged. They were very good chapters. I think that I hate to say it, Sam, but I think it was worth the wait. You did a good job.
My chapter. Oh,
And housing looks really good too. Yeah.
Housing looks good. Yeah, I thought we got some good stuff here. I mean, I think mine needs some more surgery, but at least we got stuff to work with. So I think that's progress. And that's all of them in now, right? Exactly.
Yeah, I have. Well,
Yeah.
I still have data for land use and zoning, which I got. Well, I got the raw data yesterday, and Karina and Colleen are working on putting it in a little chart
But
for me.
the
so-
basic structure is in place though for
Yeah.
everything now, right?
Yeah.
Which is great progress. If we all got hit by a bus now, Sarah could put it all together. So
Yes.
she may have to do
That's
anyway,
right.
regardless.
Sarah, can you enable screen sharing?
Absolutely.
So why don't we
Process.
so let me just summarize where we are on this. So I think the chapter that's still got the most outstanding comments is economic development. So I can share my screen, but there's a lot. Wait a minute, let me make it a bit bigger if I can. So if you remember, it's a shame that Julie's not here tonight because I think we're gonna have to, I can go through the kind of the key items that are still outstanding, but we really need to connect with Julie on this because it's her chapter on behalf of the she's the main sponsor on behalf of the Economic Development Committee. So if you remember at the last meeting, we went through some of the updates that Julie had made from an earlier version, and then she had to leave, and then we continued conversations, which is all well reflected in the minutes. So I made a number of updates. I guess the 2 main ones were to try and get clarity over the difference between the downtown, as in the broader geographical area, and the downtown district, which is the new kind of zoning district that emerged out of the work that was done with planning and EDC and the Board of Selectmen over those zoning changes. So that's been reflected throughout. And then we did have quite a conversation around Route 9 and what the recommendations were going to be around Route 9. And I think the conclusions there were we wanted to be able to explore further things like mixed use on Route 9, but not make it a definitive statement that we were definitely going to go for mixed use on Route 9. So I've kind of wordsmithed some of that section and the associated recommendations. And then there's a number of comments from Debbie around maybe, I think, providing a little bit more detail around the EDC survey and around the current status on some of the obstacles to Route 9 development. So, I mean, we could, sorry.
I was just going to say that the only comment I have about the surveys, and I did this in the housing, is over a couple of revisions, is the survey is a point in time snapshot of, I don't know what their percentage is. And personally, I'm in favor of removing any survey reference, because this is a 10-year plan, and this is, it's such a small little minute point in time when the survey was taken. That's why, that's just a general comment. You guys can just overrule that or whatever, but I don't like surveys in a master plan, because that's a specific survey for a specific thing versus a master plan, which should be all encompassing.
And that is very, if you remember, like way back, probably almost 2 years back, when we were talking about what form do we want this master plan to take? Do we want to simply update the 2008 plan or be more holistic? And also what our kind of content positioning was. We did say that we wanted to avoid duplicating a lot of detail from other kind of town plans like the OSRP and the housing production plan, and also on the survey. So there is a section in the vision chapter that outlines how we approach the survey, because I think that's important to explain what we did and how we did it. And then we've got a hyperlink to the survey questions, but also the survey results. So it's not that we're kind of ignoring it. We're just saying, if you really, really want to look at, what was a one input into the whole process, you can. We're just not going to provide huge amounts of detail in here. So,
but Tom, to your point, if I could interrupt, Judith, I'm sorry. They had 450 or something responses, which is actually sort of at the lower end of statistical significance there, if you're trying to look at statistics there. So it's not a huge percentage of the population in town, but yet I think the statisticians would argue that there's some information there, and clearly it's a one shot opinion thing, and I wouldn't bet my economic future on it. On the other hand, I think it's a useful weather vane of what people are interested in. So maybe describing.
But it's also 5 years ago. It's mid 2017.
Yeah.
That's what, again, holistic. It's a point in time. Mid 2017 is very, very relevant. There's a lot of things happen in the world, and it's pre-COVID. Everything going forward is now changed because of the last 2 years.
But it hasn't changed that much. And I don't mean to interrupt you, but I believe surveys are a point in time, and I hear what you're saying, and things can change over time. But I think it's very important that anytime we can mention how we gathered the data is important, because people will come back and say, oh, I didn't know about this. I didn't hear about this. How did you get your information? And we need to share that all of these public forums and surveys were conducted. And I think over time, what we've seen is there is a consistent theme with the surveys that are done over the years. And as long as you reference what year you did it, I think people can put it into context. But I do think data is data, and it is important to reference. But I hear you, Tom. It's not the end all be all. It's not everything is written in stone because of this one survey.
Yeah, I agree, Kat. Right. I think there's great value in our at least public posture, being that we made significant effort to reach out to the community. This is one important piece of that. And again, it's not the total answer, but I think all we can do to reinforce that public input is hugely helpful for the end result. So,
and for comparison, over 400 responses. Is that a gold star for responses in Southborough?
No, that's actually pretty common now. The MTC did one. I think they got 400 and something.
Yeah. So it's statistically, it might not be significant, but for Southborough, it's significant.
No, I think it's at the lower threshold. Somebody, the MTC guys, had a statistician look at it and say that is.
Yeah, we definitely had confirmation that it was statistically significant, because we were doing it with the MAPC, as you say. So, but sorry, just to be clear here, the survey that I think Debbie was suggesting that there is more detail provided in this chapter is the EDC survey, not the vision survey.
Yeah, and just to jump in, Judith, and I have to really apologize, because I obviously was commenting on an old draft. So that's, not great. So thank you for moving some of these comments over. But I was getting a little bit confused because actually there's even more surveys that are described, I think, later on. There's a Watson and there's something else. And I felt like I didn't exactly know what we were following. So I made this suggestion that maybe the EDC survey, I think, was, very important, but it's not really discussed until later, on like page 5 or 6. But now I understand that there was a, intentional kind of way that this is set up, not to go into so much detail about these surveys. So I would just have to take it for what it's worth. I thought that the EDC survey was very important. I thought maybe you should just put a couple lines that it was done, and maybe when it was done, because I'm not even sure if that was done later down below.
Okay. So I guess, so Sam had made some, his is mainly kind of wordsmithing, and Mimi, you had some comments in here. But I think a lot of the comments, Debbie, came from you. I don't know, that's where it's tricky here because Julie's not here. So I'm just wondering if, rather than try and go through each comment now, it might make sense, Debbie, for you and Julie, and maybe, I'm not here for the next week, so maybe if you and Julie and perhaps Mimi could connect and agree where we need to make changes, and then between you make those changes.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Sure.
Because
I felt like mine was mostly like kind of clarification. So I don't know if has she seen them, by the way? My comments? We don't know.
haven't heard from
yeah,
her.
so I can connect. Yeah.
I don't know, because my sense when we originally, I'm going back way back here, this our strap line was around commercial diversity, and I know the original group that we had was Kathy Bartolini and Mimi, and I think Bonnie was in there.
Aaron Shimkus. That was
Yeah.
a bad group to be
Yeah.
in, evidently. I'm the only one left.
Only survivor.
The only
Get a medal.
survivor.
There was a loud explosion, a cloud of dust, and Mimi walked out. Oh,
Yeah. But I think, we've now got, the three of you, if like Mimi from planning, Julie from EDC, and Debbie, you from ZBA, I think though, like between the three of you, I think that's a really powerful little triumvirate, if you like, to kind of go through these comments and make any final updates that we want to make. If that would work for you guys. I mean, I would happily join as well, but I'm literally in Montana, so on a ski slope, so this is not going to work for me next week.
You have a ski phone? Wait a minute.
You're not bringing your phone with you?
Jeez.
I have my phone with. I am not taking a laptop. Trust me, I'm not taking a laptop. Yes.
Yeah, that's totally good with me, Judith.
Okay, that would be awesome.
Yeah.
The only potential issue is that it doesn't make any difference to me because I'm old, but next week is school vacation week. So I don't know if Julie's going to be around, but I'll reach out to her and see if we can connect.
Right. Yeah. So is there any, so let me just, so there's a survey. There was a couple of things, a few things where Sam had actually filled in some gaps. Oh, this is just a general point that I want to make. Because I know, Mimi, you changed this to select board and Sam had changed it back to board of selectmen. So I'm like,
I shouldn't have, because we're now officially the select board.
well, yeah, but when you get, so we are now.
Yeah.
Officially
The
the
AG
select
approved
board.
the warrant article
Okay.
approval from
Yeah.
town meeting. So officially that's done.
Yes.
Oh, good.
So,
Great.
hence my little note here is, I as we've gone along, I've tried to keep everything as Board of Selectmen, because then it's much easier to do like a
Right,
global
global,
search
yeah.
and
Oh,
find
okay.
a place. So that's the only reason I did it, Mimi, so that
Okay.
we know that we're kind of following through that. So I will post this version back in tonight's meeting prep folder. And then, yeah, there were some of those changes we've already done. Yeah, so I added some comments, some responses, Debbie, to some of this. But a lot of the comments that, so your comments are blue. Mimi's comments are just black. So I think that would be great. And yeah. Okay. I think that's it. Has anybody else looked at the chapter and still has to kind of send suggestions, or are we just saying this is it, other than Mimi, Debbie, and Julie kind of having a final go at it? Okay.
Go for it.
Speak now or forever hold your peace, as they say. Me. So let's do Sam next. Sam's opus magnum, as we say.
That means it's too long.
Just means it's a well, to
Easier
be
to cut.
fair, you did have one of the hardest ones because we put together 3 different objectives into one chapter. I think you did draw the short straw on that. So everyone see this?
See a screen of files,
See if-
listed, not a
yeah.
document open.
Let me try again, hang on. So this
There we
book
go.
has some comments from me. It has Mimi's comments in it.
Yeah,
I
Judith,
think-
I would comment that I actually made it all the way through, and the goal was to make sure that I included all the things that I thought were appropriate to get in there. And then I intended to go back and do a cleanup pass through it and ran out of time. So there's still a little cosmetic work to do on it, but I think most of the key components are in there. And when I was in doubt, I included stuff that we might want to go back later and remove. But I was interested in having folks see what I thought was a relatively complete version of stuff.
Yeah.
And there are some things that are better supported than others, and some things where we need some data that I didn't have. But again, I think the list is manageable now in terms of open issues here. And,
yeah, there are some comments here. I did. So, Debbie, I haven't seen anything from you. Have you? You didn't send me anything, and I've lost it.
No, I didn't make any edits. I mean, I thought it read very well. So I didn't send any comments.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I thought it read very well too. It was an easy read.
Mhm.
I think my only comments were I looked up some updated data and
good. Okay.
plunked that in.
Oh yeah, there is one here, Sam, just to draw your attention to this one. November 2021, the MPC asked our committee asked for narrative and recommendations on public health, noise bylaw, and lighting bylaw. Which I don't think
I can do that.
okay.
Where would that go? Current conditions here.
Where are we with those 3?
Yeah.
Well,
It's a good point. I thought I put some public health in here. I can't remember now, but that's an important story because I think we've made great progress with the Board of Health over the last several years, which was historically, tragically underfunded. And
yeah, I don't
really
think that.
rejuvenated.
I know we talked about it. Yeah, probably under summary of current.
Okay.
That's why I put the little note on
Good
that.
point. I can do that pretty quickly.
Okay. Technology. Just running down, looking for the comments here. Oh yeah, this is the table this is still the 2008 table on the facilities.
Right, yeah,
So that just needs updating.
yeah. And
And
small point, I actually couldn't quickly find the number of square feet in the new public safety building. So that should be an easy one to find, but I just couldn't.
oh,
I think it's like 30,000 or something, maybe, I don't know.
I think I thought I'd updated that.
Right. Let's see. Anyway, small data point there, but number of things like that in there.
I just Googled and it said something like approximately 35,000. So.
Oh, good. Okay. I was figuring a cost. They call a cost like $500, $600 a square foot to build, and it was
Right.
17 million. So
Okay.
guessed it. Hey,
So
Bill,
actually
question
there's-
for Bill on the spec
Yeah.
stuff. Bill, was hoping you would have a chance to look at this and make any edits on it, because I was sort of going from memory on it.
I don't see Bill. Is he still here?
Here I am.
Oh.
What was your question, Sam?
I'm saying this on the public accessibility and the SPAC. I made this stuff up from my recollection of what had been going on there, but I would hope you would have a chance to review it and make any corrections to it.
That's my line. Say I made it up. You're an informed elected official of the town, Sam. You have to be a bit more convincing than that.
Sorry. You get what you see here. You see what you get, however it works. Yeah. I do that all the time in my day job, so gotten away with it so far.
Give me just a second. Continue without me, as they say. I'll read this.
Yeah, no,
Actually,
no,
we
you don't have
should
to do it
have
right
gone
now.
through this,
Just
but-
when you get a chance to.
No, I'll have something here.
Okay. And then there's actually, Sam, I think I put a note in here saying, do we really want to have all of this detail around the heating costs and all this? I actually have a really nice document from John Parent that, because we wanted to put something in natural resources about energy use, and he has given me current usage. So I'll send you that. We can either put it in here or we can put it in natural resources.
Yeah, I think this is one of those things I waffled on that was borderline filler stuff that we could refer people back to the prior version.
Yeah.
Not much has changed here.
Yeah.
Fayetteville Hall is gone, but
yeah, I think I thought it might be useful just to have it. What I was thinking, I probably didn't say that properly in the notes, was because there's two sections to it, and maybe it's just worth saying, well, what are the interesting things around the facilities, and just having, one table with
a couple of sentences.
in there. Yeah.
Anything we can do to streamline this would be helpful, because it is too long still.
Yeah, and then there's just some 2008 data that needs updating.
Yeah. Is our new historic district in here somewhere? I can't remember actually, or somewhere else. We just got designated historic district, the Main Street area, after many years of effort on that.
Right.
We did.
Yeah.
Okay, the historical stuff is in chapter 7.
Okay. Might be useful to follow up with a note on that and get it. I mean, it's not it's now 2022, so that I always waffle on it's a 2020 or whatever plan. So how much do you put in current? But I like to get as much as we know in.
Okay.
I think it mentions it in there that we were
Have
seeking
applied.
it or something.
Yeah, see,
Oh,
so it just got granted, so that's
Okay.
yeah.
That was one of my chapters. When we do the final edit, that'll be in the note. So this is just me speaking for Kate Battles. Kate, can you make sure that you action me to follow up with that point about the historical district in chapter 7, please? So here we go.
Hey, can I ask a quick question about the infrastructure, the way that Sam had written that? Is there any issues? And I know, Sam, you said it on the advisory board, so you're probably the best suited to make sure it's not a security risk to describe anything in more detail than is necessary. So
Yeah, I think,
terrorists can't take over.
yeah.
Sorry.
More than they already have.
Yeah.
I didn't see anything in there that was problematic.
Mm.
But I'll go back and look more carefully at it. But I
I'm
don't
sure
think,
you're
I
good.
mean,
at
the
it.
issue simply is that if you give too much information about the water supply system in terms of where all the switches and valves and what's the password to the computer to control them, you know,
That's not good.
Not
That-
good. That's right.
That is bad.
That's bad.
And then the one other question, are we calling this the 2022 plan?
I don't know.
No,
Good question.
it's going to be, we agreed a couple of meetings ago, it's going to be the 2021 plan.
Okay, thank you.
The 2021 plan that is formally accepted in early 2022.
Okay, thank you.
But that is a good point, Kat. That's another of those kind of global search and find and replaces that we'll do. So
A bunch of update stuff here for data.
little updates, and then you did a bit of editing on the goals and recommendations, so I just put those changes in there.
Okay.
So, and then I've just put just a comment in there, Sam, around this intensive commercial development, because that's in the economic development chapter.
Yeah.
So we just need to make sure we're not duplicating
Right.
that.
Yeah. I don't care so much where it is as long as I'm just grabbing stuff.
In
that
there,
I would
yeah.
like.
And then Bill, this is line 437. These are the original recommendations when we had the individual accessibility section in the circulation and transportation. So there's a recommendation in here now. Where did I see it? Around, oh, here we go. PS 1.2 talks about projects identified by the SPAC.
Public Accessibility Committee, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So we just need to just know whether or not we can take out this kind of completely separate goal and recommendations around ADA.
That would help skinny it down some, certainly. I mean, we've done
Do you
4.1.
believe that's not an appropriate goal, or you think that goal is covered somewhere else?
I think that's covered by the one above. And what was Judith's 2 point something, 1 point,
1.2.
yeah, 1.2.
1.2, I'm sorry. Shit. Okay, I see your
I'd
point.
rather have broad scope on this stuff that gives you a lot more flexibility to
I see your point. Yeah,
put
that's
things in
fine.
the bucket.
Yeah.
Then you can sort of define your own details as you go along.
Right. Yeah, Sam, when we're ready, I don't want to delay this review, but I have just a couple of brief comments on
Why don't you send them to
paragraph.
Judith and me then, if it's more than we want to talk about here?
Well, let me phrase what my concern is, and maybe you can determine whether in fact I should be reviewing something here. I mean, I think the interesting idea here was that the SPAC committee, or the SPAC, is going to put together a plan to rectify all of the problems that have been historically discovered here in the project, the 5-year assessment that we already did in the city. My concern about that is that, in fact, it really isn't exclusively SPAC's responsibility because of budget issues, because we have other organizations like Public Works, et cetera, which in fact I have responsibility and control over various elements that have to be rectified. And so, I mean, I have no problem with saying SPAC has it's appropriate for SPAC to lead in that context, but in fact, there are other organizations in town which are also, or which are really responsible for making the improvements necessary to solve all the discovered
Implementation.
problems.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's a good point too. We have someplace in here responsibilities, or we're going to, right, Judith?
Yeah, that's in the implementation
Yeah,
plan.
so clearly SPAC, I see SPAC as sort of a leadership management kind of role, coordination role. And then including all the other folks, DPW facilities, whoever else might be involved in the process, to make sure we've got a reasonably comprehensive list of
Well,
entities.
and in addition to that, I mean, I think there are issues concerning how we afford some of these improvements as a city and when we in fact undertake those things based on budgets, et cetera. So capital planning and other people really play an important part in this thing, in addition to the organizations or the groups that are directly responsible for the project.
Good point. And again, I think that we seem to be headed in the right direction there in terms of thinking about doing things as we're doing other work as well. So in other words, if we've got another maintenance or rehab project, building in the accessibility pieces to that, as opposed to waiting until after we've constructed once and going back and construct again somehow. So I think we're getting more coordination in that than we have historically, maybe.
Right. So in fact, I guess we're talking about responsibilities, which is either yet to be defined here or not to be included in this particular section. Do I understand that correctly?
Judith, that's in there's an implementation piece
There's an implementation.
later here. Yeah.
Okay. Because
Make sure we
capital
just get the
planning
right-
as well as others should be mentioned, I think, in that context.
Exactly.
Good. Done. Good job, Sam.
Thank you.
Okay, so we can take out these previous ones, yeah? These older ones?
Yep.
That's
PS
fine.
4, 40, and 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah.
All right, let me just hang a sec. I have to be careful here, otherwise I'll get my version muddled up. Hang on. 2.2.
I want to put in an administrative plug here. I really like the line numbers, even though I did it. I use those frequently for editing documents in groups, and it's hugely helpful to have that stuff in there. It's one keystroke in Word. Folks haven't done that before.
It is helpful.
I'm going to have to learn not to do it on my iPad here because I don't see those line numbers.
Okay. Oops. You need a bigger iPad. You need the iPad Max.
Well, it's
I think it might be because they don't always appear. I'm not sure they appeared on the in the Google Drive version.
Oh, okay.
exactly.
I don't think Google Doc likes lines, but I might be wrong. Okay. So that's public services and facilities. Just a few little updates there. Then we have the section on resiliency. And what I did here is I kind of expanded this out. This was a section that Gina had made a first draft on.
Mhm.
So I,
Oh, that's low.
sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I heard from Gina, by the way. She's doing well and hopes to rejoin us in March. So new baby's doing fine.
So I took the MVP summary of findings and the hazard mitigation plan and basically kind of edited out how they got to the updates for the hazard mitigation plan and what the current status is in terms of the recommendations. Because what if you may remember or not, it's going back a while, we did this, Mimi and I worked with Melissa Danza, and we did this really detailed mapping to make sure that the recommendations that we'd come up with were consistent with what was in the mitigation plan. And so basically the two main kind of buckets are for the recommendations are the recommendations here, and then the recommendations around stormwater management, which was one of the key themes in the MVP and the mitigation plan. So I went back to Melissa and she's reread this, and she just says it's very much reflective of where they ended up on those two plans. So the only one that's in here, Sam, is you had added in recommendation 1.10, RY 1.10.
Yep.
That's actually already in the stormwater section in natural resources.
Good, okay. I just, again, was trying to catch things as I was thinking of them through here, and I didn't go back and read everything else, so. As long as that's actually a big issue. That's been lurking out there for a while, and the state and feds are getting more insistent on towns doing something about it. And as best of my knowledge, we've got a fairly Rube Goldberg kind of stormwater system in town, built up over time to deal with specific episodic issues, as opposed to a sort of
I'm
overall
sorry. You
plan
lost
for
me
it.
there. Who's Ruth Goldberg?
Rube Goldberg. He is
I
a
don't get that reference either.
Do I know it?
crazy inventor who made bizarre contraptions to do a variety of fairly useless things.
Oh,
It's a generational thing, I guess. I don't know. Bill knows Rube Goldberg personally, don't you, Bill?
I do personally, yes.
Good.
I've never met his wife, Ruth, but I do know Ruth.
They were a power couple.
stop it. Don't make me laugh. Yeah, so there's just a couple of little, I know, have you managed to connect with Katura recently, Sam?
Have not, she's had her hands full with the school stuff, and she's on this capital planning school research subcommittee. And so has been flat
Okay.
out on that. And what I wanted to do, Judith, was actually get this done, get a little feedback from the group maybe, and have a chance to look at it again. And then I was going to reach out to Katura and Roger Challen, and maybe Greg Martineau or Keith Lavoie, and just get them to add some of the things. For example, I didn't put in summary of accomplishments because I didn't know what they actually thought was important there. I could guess. But I
Okay,
wanted to get that kind of feedback to flesh out some details.
yeah. And then Mimi's updated your table for you.
Well, thank you.
I just had a question there, Mimi. Do we have partial teachers? Is that like,
Yeah, part-timers, substitutes or part-timers, yeah.
oh, okay,
FTEs, so they've got people who
okay,
are not
I get it.
full-time.
I get it. I was just like, how can you have a partial teacher? But okay, I got it.
I had a
According to
few of
the
those in
Mass
school.
Department of Education, we do.
You only have like the top half of them. You don't get the bottom half. Or
That's right. One's missing an arm.
sorry, we shouldn't laugh because we really. But
Bad, Sam.
sorry.
I said that's bad, Sam, but funny.
That's hard to work on the whiteboard with one arm.
Yeah, and some of these charts obviously need
Yeah.
to be updated as well.
The data. And there's actually some good enrollment projection data now that would be useful to put in here. They've done a lot of work on that, given the school facility stuff that's going on.
Okay.
And Judith, I agree with you. There's too much here out of their strategic plan, but I wanted to get all of that stuff in there to have them have a chance to.
Okay.
Here's
So
what we
there's
think is important.
yeah. So there's a couple. I did a couple of little options. Well, I did one little thing. I kind of summarized. I
Yeah.
tried to summarize it in a little box, but also then when I went back this week, when I was starting to cross-reference, cross-check all of the recommendations in the implementation plan against the chapters, I realized that I think a lot of the goals that Katura and her guys created actually reflect these strategies.
Yep.
So I think the recommendations actually embody the strategies of those 20.
Tom couldn't hear you.
So yeah, but if you're going to go through that and talk to Katura, I think I've made my notes on that. So
All right, good.
okay, but yeah, it's I just need to update that. I think it's looking good, Sam.
It's there, at least. That's
A lot of
progress.
substance in there. A lot of substance.
And it was painful. I can attest to that.
All things in life that are worth doing are painful.
It wasn't painful to read. That's the important thing.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, so I'll put that one back in the shared folder as well. And then Mr. Tom. I must admit, I haven't looked at this. I ran out of time. So, but do you want to just summarize what you?
Sure.
It's a beautifully slimmed down. Yeah.
Yes.
I looked at it.
So
Great. Yeah.
the gist of the slim down, well, first thing, I updated all the different charts that they gave us. Number two, there was reading it and reading the MPP, there was so much duplicate, especially around the personal income, housing incomes and stuff like that, which I didn't think was prudent for this chapter. So a lot of that got cut out. So those are two major things that happened in the chapter.
Okay.
So we don't see the chapter, Judith. Yeah, I thought that read very well too, Tom. There we go.
Okay.
So I liked all the statistics, what was accomplished. That's the beginning part that which is going right through. The active organizations, they should know who's in town, the active players. I thought that was also important to keep in. And like I said, if I'm missing anybody, this is a good time to tell a committee or a board that we should add into that. Now we can scroll a little bit more. Again, a lot of the updated statistics. Again, the housing one, the thing about the housing, we have to do the demographics. So I thought it was important to keep the demographics into it, and I removed the financial aspect of it, like average income, average house, a lot of that stuff was removed. Population trends, those are the new graphs in there. Population by age, I thought is very good to have in there. If you want to scroll just a little bit more, the social characteristics. How is Southborough made up? What's the different ethnic groups? Hang on there, so go back a little bit. So I mean, a lot of this stuff is probably very self-evident for the people that live in town. I mean, I'm open to suggestions on this. I just think it's important personally, and we could discuss this and debate this. Let's find out how our town is built up to be, who's living there, what type of characteristics, what type of backgrounds they have. And these are a lot of the statistics that we're going through. What age groups are most of the people in town, which is a nice trend you can see.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think when we looked at this, like as we've said for all of the chapters, the important thing is to have the data and the narrative like draw you to the conclusions that you're making. So the big focus on housing has been about the diversity of housing in terms of options for people at their different stages in their life cycle. So I think it speaks really well to that.
Now, there's one section I do want to point out. It's where I talk about employees that work in the town of Southborough. So that's a little bit further down. Hang on. Continue. Right here. I mean, I want to know your thoughts on this paragraph right here. This is the one that I thought it was important to put in. To say that how many people actually work in town, live in town. But I'm open to, if people don't think that's appropriate, I'm open to a debate on this one right here.
I like keeping it in.
Yeah, the Julie's chapter talks about this a little bit also, and she kind of expands to say, well, there's more people who now will work remotely, and that is now their place of employment. So she expands a little more to say, and we need more services for people because there's more people working in town who live in town, but it's in a different sense, working remotely.
Right, this doesn't do the gist of working remotely. This is the gist of people, like they still go out, they drive to their work, they do their jobs,
yeah.
Teachers, whatever. And that this paragraph, and this is why I'm, like I said, this is the one that I was wavering on. I like it that it's in. I think it's important information that says a lot of people that actually work in town don't really live in town. And that's why I kept it in.
Yeah.
I think it's important. I like it.
I'm not a voting member. This is Kristen, but I agree.
Yeah, me too.
And then the goals, while back, I think I missed that meeting, Judith. Sarah and I, we collapsed. There was a goal 5, and we talked about the moderate affordable. We put it at 2.3, so it's still bolded there. So we kind of like got rid of the 5 because we didn't think it deserved its own number, but we collapsed it into the other ones.
It was demoted.
Demoted. It was not worthy of a number.
Okay. So I don't know if everyone else has had a chance to look at this. I haven't. So I'll take another look, Tom. If there's anything I've got on it, I'll let you know. Yeah.
Yeah, and just personally, the month of January is Dell's busiest month because it's the end of the 4th quarter and end of fiscal year. So I do apologize for not getting back to you as often as I should.
No worries. We're there.
Now it's February, so you be on call.
Exactly, I'm free.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought that was I think that's pretty much there, that chapter. That's in good shape.
So let me just quickly show you what I'm working. I've lost that one. What I'm working on in terms of the implementation plan. Can everyone see this?
Yep.
Oh, it tells me a little message that says you can see it now. Isn't that helpful? So this is the implementation. This is the kind of the raw data or the crux of the implementation plan. It gets kind of tops and tailed and with, a bit of narrative, but it's basically here. So what I started to do is we're going to have, and this is following in the format that we had in 2008, is there's, let me use open space because that's a, sorry, the formatting is pretty horrible at the moment. So I was just working on that today. So there's going to be the recommendations listed by chapter or by topic, okay, along with the primary responsible for implementation. And I think what I'm going to end up doing there is abbreviating these boards and putting a legend in there because that gives us more space. And what I think we need to have in terms of, we need 2 more columns. One is relative priority or status, because some of these are actually complete now. And the relative priority, I think, would be, what are the most important things that we've said that we're going to start working on? And then final column that would say what's the funding source. And what I'm thinking is that as we take these recommendations out to each of the committees that are going to be responsible for it, they need to be help working with us to finalize those two columns, because it's the people that are going to be responsible for implementing it that should be saying, yeah, well, you know, with our kind of input to say, yes, this is a higher priority than that. So what's the relative priority of the recycling committee versus the open space strategic acquisition? So I'll kind of draft that up in the next few days and just put a draft version out there. Because the other thing we said we do, I said I do, I just haven't got to it, I'm afraid, is to slice this data so that each board or commission can clearly see which recommendations they're responsible for. So, you know, some recommendations are going to be really straightforward. The Trails Committee's only got one section, but there's other groups like the Planning Board, probably Board of Selectmen, are going to have several recommendations that come from different chapters. So they'll be able to see this is what they're going to be responsible for.
Hey,
So,
sorry.
yeah,
I don't want to interrupt if you have more thoughts. So
no, I am done.
So open space 2.3 with the can we add, instead of just BWALT, which is a way in the future kind of thing, can that include Burroughs Loop and Aqueduct Trail? Because those are actually trails that we're going to be establishing connections.
Oh, okay. Say again.
Yeah, so BWALT would be you can keep BWALT. But I if you wanted to just use a valid example, it would be Burroughs Loop and Aqueduct Trail.
This is an for example list, so I think 2 or 3 is a great thing to put and
Yeah.
leave it open for others.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's all I would want to add. Thank you.
Do you still want to keep the BWALT in the last one or just remove it?
Yeah, we can keep it there. It's nice that I don't know if it's listed anywhere else, and Don Byrne will be very pleased that it made it into this plan.
Absolutely.
So it's a Burroughs Loop Trail, Aqueduct Trail.
Well,
and
Burroughs
the
Loop and Aqueduct Trail and the BWALT. Yeah.
Okay.
Instead of saying trail twice, you can just use them together like that.
Bertha, and then comma instead of the comma BWALT Trail, Boston Wall.
Say again. Sorry, Sam. Say that
I'd
again.
remove the. We're doing a list of example, e.g. the yellow highlighted, and then Borough, Boston, Worcester is the other example in here.
Hey, Kat, is it really airline trail? Is that what the
Yeah.
A stands for?
Yep,
Mhm.
yep.
Yep.
I did not know that.
You didn't see the planes landing out there in Worcester?
No, right next to Bonnie's house? No.
Okay, so I have to work on that in the next few days, but I'll get that a draft into the. I'm just going to put it in back into the meeting prep for this meeting, I think.
Do we want to talk about a implementation committee moving forward here, or do we want to talk about that later?
Hey, Judith, it's Kristen. Can I interject this might be the appropriate time to interject the question I had, because as I look at this table and, you know, the goals of recreation, this is where I see potentially that conflict that I mentioned to you.
Yeah.
Or maybe not. Again, I'm overthinking it a little bit, but I just wanted to get other people's opinions.
Far away.
Thank you. So I'm trying to find it. My eyes aren't what they used to be, but
Is it-
somewhere in there,
What?
one of our goals is on the,
Yes.
yeah, it's around the community center. Thank you.
Maybe one more bigger for Sam.
I'm not alone.
Those
Um,
old eyes, yes.
somewhere in there is the fact that one of the major things we put forward in the next 10 years was the community center, right? Something with indoor facilities for recreation and to be shared with the seniors as well. Last night at Recreation, Tim Davis had shared that we were asked if Recreation would take a position on, the latest facilities recommendation involving Trotter. Long story short, we did not do that. We had a little bit of, I don't want to say debate, but discussion about it. I felt like more information was needed. I know there's been a ton of information put out to the public, but like understanding Tim's feedback and concerns that may arise from sharing, I'm sorry, not Trotter, just Woodward, and whatnot. So we're kind of in this weird state where, at least for Recreation, on one hand, and here we've said we want to pursue a community center that would offer, quite frankly, much more than, in my opinion, than what Woodward would offer. And yet we're being asked to take a position on, what's being proposed. So what's being proposed is better than what Recreation currently has. And I think we all know that that building is likely to be sold. However, is it better than going for a community center? Not necessarily. And either way, if we took a position, I'm concerned that we'd look to be, conflicting in terms of supporting, putting one thing into this master plan, but then supporting an alternative plan. I may be overthinking it. We did not take a position. We agreed that, we needed more information if we even do take a position, because obviously this is one of the more significant decisions facing the town of Southborough in a long time. But I'm just kind of curious if other people are facing that same kind of conflict as a result of these recommendations, or do we just kind of turn a blind eye to it, knowing that they're looking at that? I saw that in a couple of places when we were talking about facilities that were saying that, this is being looked at in terms of future next steps. But in the case of Recreation, there's a very real potential next step that's being proposed to the town. And so again, it came up last night again, and I'm kind of like, well, guys, I'm going to a meeting tomorrow where we're putting into a master plan that we believe we need a community center. That's different than taking over, Woodward and putting that in office amongst other town offices and sharing, one gym. So again, we didn't continue the conversation. We didn't take a position. We're going to get more information, but I'm just kind of curious to hear what others think. And if I am overthinking this, I have thick skin. Please tell me I'm doing so.
So Kristen, did Recreation think it was inadequate space? Is that what the issue was? It was just the gym?
No, to be honest with you, I think we're a little bit split. I think some would have supported it, the Woodward plan, because it's better than what we have now. And we know that the South Union building is likely to be going. So, should we support that Woodward plan? I know that Tim is working on outlining some questions he has if we were to move to Woodward. I feel like I keep saying Trotter, I'm sorry. And I was interested in learning more about that. I mean, maybe it's not the optimal plan. I don't know. There's just not enough information, I felt, to take a position. So we just agreed not to yesterday. And there'll be further discussions.
Yeah,
but again, one of my points was, hey, I'm going to this meeting tomorrow night where we have something that probably directly conflicts with supporting, Recreation's move to Woodward. Now they're like, well, sure, like that's not going to happen right away, even if the town agreed to go forward. But this is a 10-year plan, so they really do sync up in terms of timelines, and that's where I find myself kind of wavering back and forth. Again, I may be overthinking this completely, but I just was curious for your opinions.
Well, Kristen,
So can you promote Joyce into the participants? She's on the attendee list right now.
yeah, she's in the.
And then
Yep,
she's
absolutely.
Kristen, comment on that. I think you could sort of waffle on it, and basically Rec says that it's important here for the multi-use community center, and don't actually address the Woodward issue. If there's additional discussion to be had. And
Okay.
clearly, there's no simple answer to that. If Woodward is repurposed, my personal opinion is that that would certainly delay a larger, more comprehensive community center. So
Exactly.
it's certainly intertwined there. And maybe it's an even longer term plan and a two-step process: a community center and then a recreation facility, another 15 years down the road or something. I don't know, which is longer than we're planning here. I think the senior center is in a somewhat similar position in that they've been waffling on upgrading the senior center, which I think appears to have some momentum here. It may happen sooner rather than later, we hope, while we wait for Woodward to sort itself out, because they would be, as I understand it, interested in moving across the street to get more space. But again, a bunch of interconnected parts there that we can't really determine at this point. So I think leaving that door open here to say community center is a good thing, and I think a lot of people agree with that, and then leaving the details out for the time being, since we just don't know them.
Yeah, can the recommendation be made that either build or repurpose existing in some sort of flexible way, so it doesn't lock you into doing one way or the other? Like Sam was saying, you're leaving your options open.
Mimi, can I add something too?
Sure.
So this master plan is as of 2021, correct? So as of 2021, I don't necessarily know that the Woodward was actually on the table. That wasn't finalized until 2022. So I would think, Kristen, you would be safe, because as of the timing of the master plan, as of 2021, your intent was for a multi-use community center.
And I'm comfortable with that if everybody else is. Like I said, it's kind of a weird, odd timing situation that we find ourselves in. And I didn't know if the public would kind of say, wait a second. I mean, I do think that the Recreation Commission, we do need to take this into consideration on whether or not we, officially take a position on Woodward. That's where I get concerned that someone's going to say, well, wait a second, like what is it that you want, and call it into question. I also might be seriously overjudging how much people will pay attention and compare the two. So I'm comfortable with whatever this committee is comfortable with, but I did want to raise it for discussion.
And again,
Yeah,
I think
I agree with Kat. If you took the word build out and left some flexibility in there too.
So,
Yeah, we could.
Can I add a little something about the senior center?
Sure, Joyce.
This is Joyce, and the senior center really needs something now, not in 10 years. So that's what our concern is, I believe. There's a plan in the future, but it's like what's happening now. So just so long as we can continue to make a few improvements as other buildings and resources are. The library is improving, the town hall is improving, and the senior center would like continue to improve to afford services to our seniors. Not now, not in 10 years.
And
That's
Joyce, I don't know if you've been following the Capital Planning Committee, but they have been discussing accelerating the senior center renovation. In fact, as you know, there's been a delay because of the Algonquin or Assabet construction availability, and there's been conversation around trying to find ways to accelerate that to make it happen much sooner than is currently planned. So I think
exactly.
folks are listening to that. And also, given the fact that whatever happens to Woodward is going to be a few years out at the best, probably. So, again, there is recognition of a near-term need for the senior center that I think folks are taking pretty seriously. So,
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I know Jason, who's the chair of the Capital Planning Committee, came to the ARPA committee, which I'm also a member of, and made the case to fund the improvements to the senior center
Right.
sooner rather than later.
So maybe with ARPA money, which is an interesting
Right.
resource. So
Yeah.
So, okay.
So hopefully we'll get it done, Joyce.
Thank you.
I can't resist reminding Kristen that you need to watch this thing very closely, Kristen. You need to stay connected because Tom and I continue to try to sneak the swimming pool back in this list.
There is no swimming pool in the list.
It's on the
You
can
upper
come to our
list.
next-
We're
you can come
we're
to our
using the
next
upper.
There is now within the open space and rec, not the open space and rec, within open space, natural resources and recreation chapter, which we haven't looked at for a while. There is now a very nice explanation as to why the swimming pool is not going to be in the master plan. So
And it might disappear from there and wind up in at least 2 other chapters if you're not careful.
Sam, I'll let you present that to town meeting and the additional cost required for the full-time staff. for the
Yeah.
pool.
And explain it to the rec commission. I can't outrun any of the guys in the rec commission, so I wouldn't do that.
So can I just I just want to point out what I've just done here in this. So we have a goal and a recommendation, HC2, and the recommendations around a strategic plan for the development of a community gathering space, which was one of the kind of core topics within this, what we originally called sense of community chapter. And that was actually the chapter that Joyce and her team kind of really focused on. And so that was about, it was very broadly defined as a community gathering space. And then what I've done is I've just put next to it this recommendation from the rec plan around a multi-use community center. And I think from my perspective, I'm still a bit confused as to, is that basically the same recommendation? Or is the multi-use community center a little different than a community gathering space? We kind of we did talk about this once in a meeting months and months ago. We kind of tabled it because I think we all felt we weren't ready at that point because we hadn't written a lot of the master plan. But
I'll offer my perspective, but I didn't obviously author HC 2.4. When we've talked about the community center within rec and with other groups, and there would be space. I think in general, if I remember correctly, people just figure like Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, you name it, there's a shortage of spaces to gather. Honestly, like half these groups are gathering at the second floor of Southborough House of Pizza, or at Santa Concrete. That's where so I think when I think of community gathering space, or St. Mark's might lend some space to go. I remember with the Downtown Initiative, a couple times they lent some space. So we're going to these organizations and asking for loaner space. Now I know that the new safety facility offers a little bit of that. I honestly don't know a lot about that, but I know that was a gap that was being expressed in past discussions, whether it was here or part of rec, I'm not sure, but I see it every day as part of the scouts and whatnot. Just last night, there was a, lacrosse meeting at Southborough House of Pizza, on the second floor. So my guessing that the one directly above the community center was intended to address that. I seem to remember something about theater as well. So in my mind, they could be one and the same, because when we talk about a community center, we do envision, some sort of meeting rooms or spaces for that purpose as well.
Good point, Kristen. I think of a community center as a more comprehensive project, I guess, that would, as you suggest, I think include gathering spaces. But I guess I would think of the HC 2.4 as maybe as for, instead of proposed approval for one or more community gathering spaces, because I think it would be great to have a collection of those around town in various places. Could be pocket park kind of things, or in facilities or whatever.
So I think, so just to be clear what you're saying, Sam, you you're not saying build multiple community centers.
No, not at all.
It's more like
No.
one community center and then infrastructure and then some other.
Could be outdoor space. For example, the Historical Commission has been talking about putting a little amphitheater next to the Historical Museum, but the topography there actually is very nicely suited for something like that. And I think those kind of places are great if we could do more of that. And there's the infamous Pocket Park that's being developed across the street over there that I think will again be potentially a gathering space for a variety of things. So those, I thought that was the intent of 2.4 here generally, but I don't know.
Well, so the original intent of HC2 and its little subregs 2.1 to 2.4 was the reason it was written like that was because we didn't know what the requirements were. So you'll see, the first recommendation is define and document the requirements for gathering space. We don't actually, everything I'm hearing is there's lots of ideas, but not a specific solution. And that's the whole point of, calling it a strategic plan, was you start with, well, what's the actual requirement? And then you look at what the options are for delivering that. And you look at the funding and the implementation.
I think that's fine. I would just add S there. I'd make spaces plural all through there, as opposed to one space.
But are we saying then that's a different recommendation to the multi-community?
It all still works, I think. If you HC 2.0, if you make that plural and then have spaces plural through the rest of it, I think that works. It just broadens the scope from one space, including community center and library and other places there that we already talked about.
Right, but is that different to the multi-use community center that's currently in the rec plan, which is this one?
I think it's different. A subset of.
Yeah, more comprehensive than the community center is one of many possible gathering spaces. It's important, critical that we do it, but it is not the only one.
Okay. Does that work for you, Kristen?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so I'll make sure in the narrative that leads up to this kind of more general one, I'll make sure that we reference the community, that we reference the community center in 3.5 as a specific example that's focused on the rec needs. It's one of the potential spaces. Okay, I think that works nicely. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I have to update my document now. That's all I have.
Okay. On discussing implementation, do we want to talk further into the future, or are we just sticking to the master plan? Like, it's been brought up whether or not we should do an implementation committee, like a small committee to just check in with the stakeholders, I don't know, quarterly or a couple times a year to see where you are and if things are moving along, or to make sure that this that the goals and recommendations of the master plan stay.
I have a wild idea. Let's create a contest. Whoever can get more objectives and goals done will win a prize.
And what is that prize?
Oh, I'm not quite sure.
That would be the carrot part of the carrot and the stick.
Free real estate taxes for 10 years.
Yeah.
There you go. It's a good one. I know, and this implementation committee comes with a 10-year binding appointment.
Yeah, that's the part I'm struggling with, because this is a 10-year plan, and is that a 10-year subcommittee plan?
Well, didn't we talk about the board being the ultimate the board, the select board being the ultimate,
No, it's the planning board.
Planning board.
planning board, okay.
Planning board has ultimate responsibility for the
Already
master
over
plan.
this, yeah.
So let me just throw out a couple of thoughts here, because I've kind of got a picture in my head, and it's just a kind of a first, it's just a starter for 10 here. So the important thing about the implementation plan, as we've got it so far, is that there's only going to be one group responsible for a recommendation. So that group, so let's say there's a trail committee, because Kat's listening, I think I've used this one before, that there's a recommendation in there for the trail committee to do something to deal with dog poop or something. The trail committee is ultimately responsible for making sure that it gets done. They can call on whoever else they want to be involved in that. If they need help from the rec department or whether they can, it's up to them how they then execute on that recommendation. This plan is a lot cleaner than the 2008 plan because of that, because there's only going to be one responsible party. And I think the other thing that's kind of different than in 2008 is how the select board is now meeting. I think you're still meeting, Sam and Lisa, on a regular basis with all of the board and commissions to talk about what's the priorities and what are you working on, and etc. So my sense is there's a lot more collaboration and interconnection between the boards and the commissions than there was in 2008. So I think there's a significantly better chance of getting this master plan kind of into execution mode. But as is always the way with these sort of documents, and I'm talking from my own personal experience in business, because this is what I did for 20 years, is you have to have some sort of overriding governance that makes sure that stuff happens and gets done. So my thought is we move from having a large master plan committee with representatives of all of the boards and commissions to a smaller core group who would every quarter, every 3 times a year, make sure that on behalf of the planning board, make sure that those recommendations and goals are still moving along and that people are working on the things that they said they would work, which is, it's a compliance activity. And sadly, it will have to be done, because that's how stuff gets done, is if you keep asking, where are you and what's happening and can we help you, sort of idea. But also, let's say it's 3 or 4 people, that small group would be responsible for making sure that anything else that's happening in the town is captured so that it can be added to the master plan on an ongoing basis. Because the master plan should be a living, breathing document. It shouldn't be something that, oh, well, we'll just execute everything that we said we're going to do, and then in 10 years' time, we'll come back and we'll look at it and say, well, we've done this, we haven't done this, and now let's start, the next update. So there's a lot of things that we've added into the narrative in this plan that happened that weren't in the master plan in 2008, but are really good things that the town has done. So that would be my idea, just a small group who basically keep the thing warm and keep it rolling. And I said to Mimi, I would really like to be involved in that, because it's what I did for a long time in my prior life. And I'm going to be terribly unhumble here. I'm really good at it.
Agreed.
So I guess that's a question to Mimi, since this is a planning board document. Would the planning board make a subcommittee to do exactly what Judith said?
Yeah, if we, so,
I like her idea. I like that accountability. You know, let's measure. You can't know where you're going until you measure where you've been. But I think it needs a specific board, and I'm just saying, I'm thinking it's the planning board that has that biannual, quarterly, whatever you guys want to do, reporting on where the master plan stands. And that committee has to tap all the individual ones to say where you are on your goals, just
Yeah.
like she said.
yeah, so I spoke, so the planning board hasn't discussed this as of yet, but I spoke to the chair who's been through a few master plans, being on the planning board for 41 years. And he thought that the having a small implementation committee was a good idea. And I said I'd bring it to this committee, see what you guys thought, and then bring it back to the planning board, and they would appoint the committee.
I'm in agreement to that. I don't know if anybody else is.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Mimi, what responsibility would the planning board be willing to delegate to this committee? And since the planning board is an elected group, can in fact they delegate responsibilities they were elected to uphold to another organization? Am I muted?
No, I don't understand the question.
The question is, I mean, all right, the planning board is, I would think individuals on the planning board have a defined view of what their responsibilities are. One of those responsibilities, I guess, was to put this organization together, to put together a master plan. Now, the issue of how in fact that master plan gets enforced, is that actually inherent within the planning board itself and can or cannot be delegated to another group, which would be appointed by or be in some sense outside the purview of the planning board? Because what I think, what I think I hear Judith saying is this small organization has not only oversight responsibility, but responsibility to make things happen, either by calling attention to the fact that it's not happening.
No. I think the subcommittee is a reporting. It's like a subcommittee. It's not enforcing anything. It's reporting up to the planning committee, the planning board, of the actions and the goals of the master plan. It's just it's delegating this committee to do that work and report up. That's how I see it. I mean,
So let's
unless I heard-
And
Okay.
encouraging.
So
I'll
let's
buy
use
that.
the example of the Trails Committee, because Kat's here and she's smiling at me from her photo. So Trail Committee takes responsibility for their 5 or 6 recommendations. This smaller subcommittee checks in 3 times a year and says, "Hey, Kat, how's it going?" "Everything's great," says Kat. "We're moving forward. We're moving forward even more quickly on some things than we thought we were going to be able to do." That gets reported back in some sort of summary to the planning board. Or, different scenario, Kat could say, "You know what? We are really struggling on this particular recommendation. Can we throw some ideas around with you little subcommittee of how we might get around that, how we break, down the obstacles and get around that, is it something that, you guys can help us broker or facilitate by talking to other committees?" The
I
Trails
see your
still
second
responsible.
scenario. No, I think I don't like the second scenario. I think the planning board as a elected board should be doing that.
Right,
My
but they
personal
don't,
opinion.
but they wouldn't necessarily know it's a problem until, because
The
they
sub-
don't want to have to deal with 20-odd boards who are responsible for all of these individual recommendations and keep trying to work out who's doing what and who isn't.
agreed on your first point. The second one, if Kat comes back and says, I need some help, well, articulate what help you need, and this subcommittee goes up to the planning board. Hey, the trails are doing good on this, this, and this, but they need help on X, Y, and Z. Can you put it on your agenda to
Yeah,
discuss it?
sorry, you said that
Right.
better than I did. Yeah, absolutely, Tom. Yeah, yeah.
So in
I
that
like it.
sense, planning is not delegating anything. They're simply asking for input from a select group of individuals as to the progress of the master plan.
It's
Do I have
yeah,
that right?
it's the boots on the ground that will help collate the progress information, and that to Tom's point, the data to make sure that, you know, we all know that it's moving forward and what the issues are.
Mhm.
And I just think keeping it on the radar is huge. Instead of finishing it and having it go up on a shelf, never to be seen or heard from again.
It will be
And
very beautiful on the shelf, I might point out, but
it's Kristen. I kind of had a similar or question in line with Mimi's comment. So we know that before 10 years is up, there's going to be some significant decisions made, potentially in regards to, for example, what we talked about earlier, Woodward, at which point that may change several items in our current master plan. So would this committee also be charged with potentially, and I don't know the kind of the rules of the road, if you will, but like, why would we wait 10 years, right? If 3 years from now, our landscape has changed because we've made decisions about our footprint within the town, then wouldn't it be prudent to, at that point in time, go on and update the master plan?
That's a question for Mimi. This is like a rule of order, I guess. Once we do the 2021 master plan, if it is a living document, what's the procedure to update it and then get it approved by town meeting? Is that how it's done?
It gets approved by the planning board, not town meeting.
Okay, so if, like what Kristen said, in 3 years from now, whatever, we can update the master plan and then it just gets approved by the planning board. Okay.
Are master plans updated? I know you said it's a living document, but are they actually, they go back and forth to town meeting over the 10-year period?
not to town meeting, they go to.
Oh,
Or to the board, rather. Sorry.
I think there were some communities that do update their master plan more frequently.
I don't
Southwest.
think we ever have.
I don't like
There
it.
are communities though that see it as a working document, a living document, and continuously update it, you know, every couple of years or so.
Are they updated like with amendments?
I think, you know, it would, my understanding is that the towns that do that put it within the implementation section. So not necessarily updating like the plan content, but within the implementation section, making updates and then, you know, creating some narrative, drafting some narrative to kind of explain those updates.
So I guess it's even more important to have that subcommittee doing this legwork like Judith was explaining. So if nobody does anything, I guess it becomes shelfware. But if a committee is going to all the stakeholders and the goals, and like you said, Judith, your example with Kat saying, I need some help in this, and that could be the living document. So something changed in the trails, and then it gets approved by the planning board.
And what if each responsible party submitted an annual report to this subcommittee so that can then be added to the master plan? So the next time they do this, they can have an entire list of everything that's already been done in the last 10
That
years.
would be awesome.
that would be
Great idea.
fabulous.
Yeah,
Yeah,
surprising.
yeah.
If in fact there's a change to the master plan in detail, does that mean that some of our objectives are too detailed and not strategic enough?
No, the example that Chris had said, this is 2021. Woodward has not ever been discussed in 2021. So that would be it could be a implementation change, saying that is on the table and maybe it does fit into some of the goals for the different departments.
Right, but Woodward's not mentioned anywhere in the master plan, correct?
There's a couple of small references to the
Yeah.
fact that Woodward
It
School
was.
out
It
there.
actually was discussed in 21. I mean, the conversation has been going on for at least.
Yeah,
6
the
months.
conversation's been going on, but as
Yeah,
a strategic
detail.
objective,
Yeah.
have we said, oh, we have to do, community center at Woodward? Is that anywhere in our master plan? I'm using this as a specific example to
Yeah.
indicate to me that in fact, if in fact we get out, we talk about very specific things, then in fact, it may not be strategic enough. If the strategy, if our just general strategic objectives change, then the master plan has to be changed. If the detail as to how it gets implemented is changed, then there's no reason to change the strategic objectives.
I see it as a mix. I think you can have both in here to have some longer term strategic stuff that probably survives the 10-year point, and other stuff that is shorter term. I guess I don't feel compelled to be too rigid about that, but I'm one voice.
Well, I mean, the only thing, the thing I'm wrestling with here is if in fact we are, as a committee, being specific enough to instruct each one of our town committees, whatever they turn out to be, as to what we think should be done. And they come back and say, oh, in detail, we don't want to do that. We want to do something else. Then are we as a committee of, taking responsibilities from these individual committees in terms of trying to achieve something very specific? In other words, are we being the committee as opposed to a strategic oversight group?
Maybe a little bit, but I don't think so, I guess. But yeah, it's just one person's opinion. We certainly have no authority to tell any committee what to do or not.
No.
I think that's my point. Yeah.
Yeah, we hope that we're getting input from the committee, so we ought to be pretty aligned.
But
Yeah,
that's where, my sense is having, seen having read the chapters and looked at the recommendations and talked to everyone who's been involved in this for the last, 2 years, there's a deal of ownership here of the plan and the recommendations. I mean, the very fact that we have written our own master plan. It's our master plan. It's the town of Southboro's master plan, written by people who are part of the town, as opposed to in 2008, where it was, the master plan was written by a consulting group. So to me, it feels much more that there's already a deal of ownership here. And, just the very fact that, Kristen and Tim and the committee crafted the recommendations, based on the initial brainstorming we did 2 years ago. There's a lot of accountability here from my perspective already.
I agree.
Agreed.
In regards to the previous comment, I would say that to your point on ownership, and granted, I haven't been the most stellar person on this committee, but that's why last night my ears went. I tuned into the conversation because I'm like, well, wait a second, guys. Like, we have a conflict in terms of what we're discussing. So it's that bridge, right, between the master plan and the conversations happening within each of the committees. Because off the top of my head, I can think of 2 things in the next 10 years that may change on what we submitted. The first, obviously, being what we already talked about on the community center, although I do think the suggestion made by Kat to slightly reword that to say either build or repurpose a building for the community center gives us some greater flexibility there. I'm not still convinced that Woodward would be the equivalent replacement of a community center. But the other one where I really think in the next 2 to 3 years, the landscape could change is that, you know, we really want to explore turf at Woodward to the point that we have designs and, you know we need to raise money for that. We're not really expecting the town to pay for it. Well, we're going to learn a lot in the next 2 to 3 years, right? We're going to learn, we've already learned a lot, you know, it's not an easy endeavor to take on. So it might be that through these efforts, we are not successful or we are successful in the next, you know, 2 to 4 years, in which case I'd want to update the master plan to reflect one way or another, you know, if we're still pursuing it or if we said, no, it's not possible, or, you know, best case scenario, somehow we achieved it. So it just seems leaving it on the table for 10 years, you know, just doesn't cut it.
Okay, good. Looks like we're all in agreement that we want to keep this on the radar and
Mhm.
have some type of a small committee to keep it on the radar. All right, the next thing on the agenda. So we're in pretty good shape, and I'm starting to see that light at the end of the tunnel and hope it's not a freight train. So now we have to pull this all together. And what are the next steps we need to do? So there's a couple chapters that need final tweaking. Debbie and I will talk to Julie and get together on that. So we're ready to start talking about pulling it all together, doing the final editing.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. One is just agreeing a set of kind of guidelines and standards around some of its grammar, some of its kind of wording, so that when we do the final editing, we know that every time we see the word master plan, it has to be big M and big P. Okay, that sounds very trivial, but you know, every time you see a list of bullet points, do they have a period after them or do they not have a period after them? And I think Debbie I'd asked Debbie, because she seems to have the eye for some of this.
I do a lot of that in my work, so those things drive me crazy. I'd love to help with that.
Yeah, so
That's the
I've
penalty
already
for
started that
recognizing.
list. So there's an action there for me and Debbie, I think, to get together and just agree that, and then put it to the group and say, look, here's the standards. This is what we're going to be editing towards. And I promise, Sam, it will not have the word remit on it, okay?
Good. And whilst is my other one.
Oh, we have to leave in a couple
I have
of
to leave one or two in.
whilst.
sort of
Yeah, a
Easter
couple
egg
of
kind of thing.
Britisons, yes, I know. I don't know why you know.
It's a good term.
I know. Do you guys do Wordle?
Sure.
I read about it, but I don't do it.
I haven't taken the plunge yet.
All
It
right,
is
but no
quite
Oxford
a-
commas. Is that what you're saying?
Sorry?
Right,
No Oxford commas?
yes. In a list.
In a list, yeah. Well, I did go through and change the EG to
Never
over the.
mind.
I like the Oxford commas myself. One small
I do
point, Judith,
too.
we need to decide whether we're going to capitalize town when we refer to Southborough consistently or not. I don't actually care much, but.
Yeah,
sort of
that's on there. That's on
sprinkled
there.
through,
So
yeah.
there's a question of you have to define the standards and then you
Yeah.
have to go through and do the final editing.
Yeah,
And I think,
yeah.
you know, Debbie and has offered to help with that, which is awesome.
Great.
There's also, we need to kind of finalize the formatting, and I have a good friend of mine who has offered to help me with that. She's a
Great.
consultant we're going to sit and have a go. And also Melissa did this amazing job on the open space rec, the open space rec plan where she kind of took the Word document and formatted it all. So she's offered to kind of be our kind of reference point on that, to provide any thoughts. Because again, if we go outside to have that done, that's a lot of money to have some, I mean, you can get people to do it, but it's a lot of money to do it. So in the spirit of trying to do as much as we can in-house, we will do that.
And
Good.
I personally, I don't know how everyone else feels, but whatever you decide, capitals or not capitals and periods in the list, I don't care how it's formatted, as long as it's consistent. I mean, I don't think you need to check back with me personally on that, but if others want to have a rundown on that, that's fine.
We can throw it out there and in the shared drive, and anyone who wants to have a look at it can do that.
Okay.
I
And
wouldn't worry about it.
I guess from listening to the select board's meeting last night, town meeting's on May 4th.
Correct.
Do we think we'll have a draft by then?
What, you want to bring it in on a silver platter and say, here you go, or?
Well, so that people can, so when I was speaking with the chair of the planning board, he thought it would be good to socialize it first for a couple of weeks, get it out there, have it on a website, so people can see it, and then have a joint meeting with the planning board and the select board to discuss it and,
Okay,
you
yeah,
know, take any final comments and before the planning board
yeah.
votes on it.
So we should plan to do that in April then, because that gives us 5 weeks to kind of finish everything off.
Well, if we
You
did
have-
that in May, if we announced at the town meeting in May that it was done, then, you know, sometime at the end of May or
We
something.
can have
Oh,
a
so
draft
you
in
want
late
the
April.
Planning board, select board after the town meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Have
yeah.
a draft for the town meeting, have it ready late April, and have post on the website, have some copies available at town meeting kind of thing to hand out to people. I think that would work fine.
well, I
Draft
don't know about
final.
copies, but have a
Mm.
link available.
Yeah, link, no, that's way too much paper, sorry.
Yeah.
If people need stuff to read at town meeting, go on.
Hey, maybe what about like a QR, one of those QR codes?
Ooh, that would be fancy.
Very
Yeah,
smart. Yeah,
that
yeah.
people could do.
Good idea. I like it.
Do we think all our participants will be able to?
Absolutely not. Nope, they won't. But it's still cool.
It is cool.
And the last thing is pictures. Any photographers amongst us? I know we have a picture folder on the shared drive, and
This is
it's
a great idea where you
very
could
lonely.
incorporate the town. We could ask for picture submissions and get the community involved and engage them.
Oh, that
Good
would be
idea.
cool.
Why not?
Because we do
That's
have
cool.
some great photographers in town, and we might even
We do.
target that, ask some folks who
Mhm.
are known.
I
for their
would, I
photography.
could help with that initiative. I'm not gonna put that off on people.
Great.
We
That's a
would need-
great idea,
Oh,
Kathy. Thank
awesome.
you.
Okay. And homework for the next meeting, which would be, what do we have left? Economic development and then the land for. And is that it?
So,
Yeah. So when do we want the next meeting?
So we want a quick one to get these things done so we can start pulling everything all together?
I
Like
mean,
in 2 weeks?
if people can read, that's, yeah, I mean, if you and, I mean, there's you and Debbie and Julie to get together, and then there's your land use. If we could do it in 2 weeks, that would be amazing.
be March 2nd.
March 2nd.
Yeah. Because then we can say, okay, for the whole of March, we've got, that's the final editing and the reviewing, and then for beginning of April, it's kind of ready there to then start getting it out there for people to review.
Well,
Yeah.
March 2nd is Ash Wednesday, so I don't know if we want to do it on a different day.
I
I'm
also
leaving.
just want to echo what someone said earlier. It is school vacation week next week, so I'm actually,
Okay.
I can ask Julie if she's around.
Want to do March 9th then?
That works better for me.
Yeah, that works.
March 9th, so 3 weeks.
Yeah. That's still moving pretty quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, so that would be good, because if Julie's not around next week, that gives us a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Good. And then I don't think we have anybody here, so no public comment.
Minutes?
And then minutes from January 22nd. Has everyone had a chance to review them?
Riveting reading.
She does a great job.
She does.
She
Amazing.
does.
And she had them out in like seconds after our last meeting.
Wow.
So do I hear a motion to approve them?
So moved.
So moved.
In a
Second,
second,
second and third.
and a roll call vote. Signs,
Aye.
Watson,
Yes.
Markelier,
Yes.
Stivers,
Aye.
Braccio,
Abstain, I wasn't there.
McKee,
Yes.
McNuskis.
Abstain.
I think, do we have a, in Latrell, yes, so, okay. All set, and we've got the next meeting. I think that's it.
Fantastic.
And do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
And roll call again, signs. Watson,
Yeah.
Markelier,
Yes.
Stivers,
Yes.
Demiria.
Yes.
Oh, you're an ex officio. Sorry about that.
Officio,
Braccio,
Okay.
Aye.
McKee,
Yes.
and McNuskis. Joyce?
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.